Live on Facebook. Live on Instagram. Excellent. So we'll just give it a minute. Like I said, let a few people hop on there.
Awesome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
to the Hive. So we're going to start off our live the way we do every live, just mentioning our newsletter. So our newsletter goes out every Thursday, so you still have time to sign up for tomorrow's newsletter. Our newsletter has all the events going on throughout Colchester. So we do all the work for you guys, compile it into a newsletter, send it out. It has sports, family, music, food, all the stuff that you want to know about. And like I said, it's Colchester-wide, not just Truro. So go over to trurobuzz.com, sign up. It'll be in your inbox tomorrow, and you'll know all the fun things going on in Colchester. So we are here tonight, Wednesday, February 16th. I'm the worst with the dates. With Dr. Gotham Mata from Doc Braces here in Truro.
Thank you for having me.
And we are going to be chatting today about everything children's dental health related. It is Children's Dental Health Month on this February. And so we're really excited to kind of chat about that. If you have any questions, let us know. Dr. Mata can answer them. Let us know questions about your children's dental health, about orthodontics, just anything you have. So let us know. So I will just let you kind of chat and tell us a little bit more about yourself.
For sure, absolutely. No, thank you again for having me.
Absolutely, we're so glad you're here.
No, it's nice. It's nice to kind of, the world kind of going a little bit back to normal.
So
right?
true. I know. It is different. It's just even to have people in the studio because we went so long doing lives where people couldn't be in the studio. So it's great to have, visitors over.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so for myself, I was born and raised just north of Toronto. I went to university at McMaster, did my undergraduate there, and then after I kind of lived in Hamilton for 4 years after school, I got into dental school and actually moved to New York City.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I went to NYU for dental school, spent 4 awesome years in New York City during that time. And then it was during dental school when I kind of was getting really interested in orthodontics. So that's when I was focusing kind of more even though in dental school it's focusing more on the ortho aspect of everything. And that's when I got really involved with this is something I think I could see myself doing for the rest of my life.
Right.
The only thing that sucks is that after 4 years of dental school, you realize you got to do some more school. Right? So in order to specialize in orthodontics, I had to do a 3-year orthodontic residency after dental school, which I also did in New York, just outside of New York City. And so what happened was after I finished my residency in New York, I made the move back to Canada, moved back home where my family was, and I started kind of working in some couple of offices there, private practice, just working just for some other doctors who had a couple of offices there. And then in 2019, at the end of 2019, I kind of reached out to Doc Braces because they had a couple of openings for some spots to kind of work out here. And there was an opportunity to work at this Truro office, kind of like an every other week situation where I would kind of fly in, fly out.
Oh, wow,
while
okay.
also kind of still living in Ontario.
Right.
So I was like, you know what, let's do it. I'm engaged. I'm engaged.
Congratulations.
And my fiance, who's also an orthodontist, was a couple of years below me, so she was still in residency. So I was like, you know what, at this point, why not just kind of I've never been out east.
Right.
So I was like, this is gonna be a cool
wow.
experience. I've never really gone outside of Ontario, other than kind of going to the States and random spots. So I was like, you know what, why not? So I started doing the whole fly and fly, literally December 2019, January 2020, and then COVID.
Holy. Oh, that must have been crazy.
Yeah.
Not only that, but to be in a profession where you're literally in people's mouths.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That was definitely an interesting time when it was the whole uncertainty aspect of it.
Right.
Because I know for everybody it was too, but for us it was kind of what's going to happen to our profession?
Absolutely.
They're telling you don't go anywhere people 6 feet. I'm like, but what if I need to be 6 inches from their face? Right?
Yeah.
Am I kind of?
And I mean, dental work can't go away. Everybody needs dental work regardless.
Regardless.
Yeah.
Right? So I think it just kind of more or less just kind of, you had to kind of come to terms. Like I remember when COVID first started, it was a lot of like, okay, I need to put on an N95, I need to put on this, I need to put on a shield, I need to put on everything. And we did it. Like don't get me wrong, like we had a great group at Doc Braces. We're kind of like a national brand across Canada.
Right, of course.
So we have a great team that kind of like came together. And the great thing was that they got all the doctors involved.
Yeah.
So I remember just doing town halls with everybody and like a bunch of other doctors, kind of giving their input based on like how can we safely reopen.
Right.
So that was definitely interesting for a couple months where we were kind of just dealing with a lot of emergency only, a lot of virtual online things to see what we could do to kind of help.
Mm-hmm.
And then it got to a point where when we reopened, I kind of was like, hey, I think I can help out east for a while and kind of help out here. So they asked me, like, there's a couple of offices out in the Maritimes that need some help. So I was like, yeah, you know what, let's do it. So during 2020, I was actually working at the Doc Braces clinics in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia.
Oh, wow.
So I was actually working all the way up in Woodstock, New Brunswick, to Fredericton, New Brunswick, to Truro, and I was also working in Yarmouth.
Holy.
Yeah.
So from not ever being east to like literally traveling
to
all over.
To pretty much, I've done more of the East Coast now than most East Coasters, right? So.
Well, I mean, at least you got to see it. So
yeah,
that's great. Yeah.
Like I genuinely got to see it, and I got to like. Don't worry, it was a lot. I put a lot of miles on the car, and like it was a lot of driving, but. At this point, I'm used to it. Like,
right.
You find a great podcast.
I mean, you're not flying back and forth.
No.
That.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so then, when my fiance finished her residency, we were just like, hey, we don't know what the world's gonna be in the next few years. Like, why not just kind of see what we can do out here? So she's now the orthodontist kind of at the Doc Braces in Halifax and Dartmouth. And I'm now working full-time here in Truro and still going between Yarmouth and Bridgewater.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
Yeah, so we both now kind of live central, like in Halifax, but it's been great.
Oh, that's awesome. What a great story. Like,
right?
just, yeah, it really is,
right?
honestly. Like, never been out east, and now you're both living here and,
yeah.
you know, in the community, and that's
community
fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's great. I'm going to check and see if there's any comments here so
For
far. Sure. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Okay, no comments yet. We'll keep checking.
Awesome.
So if you're just tuning in, we are speaking with Dr. Matta from Doc Braces here in Truro, and we are chatting because February is Children's Dental Health Month. So you may have noticed we've done some social posts over the month. We also did a blog, so you can check that out at trurobuzz.com as well with Doc Braces, and we talked about children's dental health and when it's a good time to visit an orthodontist. And there's just lots of good information. So check that out if you have a chance. So just to kind of go over, I mean, I'll just kind of read this little bit about Doc Braces. You had mentioned that they are, chain is not the word.
Kind of like, what part would be the best way? It's like we're kind of like a national kind of medical center or dental center.
Right. So
right?
You have there's various offices across Canada.
Yeah. Across Canada.
So Doc Braces is proud to be a network of community-based orthodontic clinics, doctors, and teams. They create beautiful, confident smiles for their patients across Canada. So from there, I guess maybe we will just kind of jump into some of the questions here. So I did mention about the best time for a child to see an orthodontist. So do you want to give us a little bit of info on that?
Yeah, definitely. There's always the misconception. Like there'll be times where we always say, like in the Canadian Association of Orthodontics and American Association of Orthodontics, we say that the first time a child should be seen by an orthodontist is around age 7. And sometimes we'll be doing a consultation and a parent will be like, yeah, our dentist told us to come, but they're too young. Like they're so young. And what a lot of parents, I think it's just kind of, they don't understand, or what maybe they just don't have the knowledge, is essentially that there's always things that we can kind of anticipate, where we can start planning. Even if there's nothing we need to do then, there's things that we can do when just doing an initial examination,
right.
Looking at kind of the clinical exam, looking at the x-rays, because a lot of people will be surprised that there's some things happening. It's kind of like when you have a car, right? You're obviously going to want to look under the hood. It's the same thing with your mouth. Like, because when you have all your baby teeth, you know that there's a set of adult teeth under there.
Right.
But what not a lot of people understand is that there could be a lot of things happening to those adult teeth at a younger age.
Oh, how interesting.
Yeah.
You're giving me info. My son's 6 and I really wouldn't, unless, my actual dentist was to say, you should take him to go see an orthodontist.
Yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't even have thought
and
for that to be a thing.
Exactly, and there are times where it's more common than you think to be missing an adult tooth, like an adult tooth just not grow.
Oh, wow.
Right, and a lot of parents will come and I'll kind of tell them, like, hey, do you know that they're missing an adult tooth? And parents will be like, no, I had no idea. And I'm like, okay, well, at least now you know, so it's something that we can now plan for.
Right, exactly.
We can plan for. And I always tell everybody, the great thing is by kind of seeing them at a younger age, we now have an initial time point. So now we can kind of see how they're growing, how they're developing, how is their facial structure going. Is there anything that we need to do at an earlier age to help them kind of get onto a path that'll be kind of least kind of problematic down the road?
Right. So it's a preventative thing. Like,
Absolutely.
These are the issues.
Absolutely.
Maybe there's none.
Yeah.
But maybe these are the ones we're going to catch
Exactly.
before they're already. It's to the point where now it's really extensive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because what I tell people is that not everybody, everybody's mouth's completely different, and even from your mouth to your child's mouth is completely different as well. Just because all it takes is for the way an adult tooth grows is as it grows, it eats away the baby tooth, and that's why when a baby tooth falls out, it's like a tiny little piece. It's not like a giant tooth just flies out of the mouth.
Right.
Like, there's a giant tooth. It's a tiny little piece. But what people don't understand is that as the adult tooth grows, if the adult tooth isn't kind of growing directly above that baby tooth, then sometimes what happens is that adult tooth could get deflected. And if it gets deflected, it's going to try to find its own way in one way or another. And that's why sometimes when you see some patients who come in, or some kids, or even some adults who will be like, oh, I still have a baby tooth there, but my adult tooth's directly right above it. It's because there are things like that we could have probably noticed happening at a younger age, and possibly have just done something about it then to avoid something big like that happening in the future.
How interesting. Honestly, that's really great information, I feel like, because it's also that's the time where kids are starting to lose their teeth.
Yeah.
Like, I'll use my son for example. He's 6. He's got his first loose tooth and he's pumped.
Yeah.
But it's taking a really long time to come out, and you can start to see the other one underneath, and I'm constantly like, wiggle it, let's get that out of here, wiggle that tooth.
Exactly.
But you've given me some food for thought, being like, okay, well, that might be something that we need to really keep an eye on and make an appointment, because I wouldn't have thought. And you saying, the difference between your mouth to your child's mouth, because as I was, before we went on camera, I was mentioning how I went to the dentist. I was always great. Dentist, your teeth are amazing, and I left there like I'm the best.
Yeah.
So I just honestly was thinking my kids. That's how my kids' teeth are going to be too.
Exactly. And most people think the same.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's great information. So I think we probably maybe touched a little bit on this, but what's the benefits of early assessment for kids coming in around that age?
For sure. And the benefit is that when we see them at that early age, we can really tell what kind of road we're going to be going down in the future. Like, it's very common for us to be like, hey, there's different classifications that we can group every mouth into. Right. Where we know we're like, okay, we're kind of seeing where this tooth grows in. Okay, maybe they're going to need to do this at some point. Or this tooth, oh no, they'll probably just need this down the road. But what a lot of people don't understand is, don't realize that orthodontists do more than just look at your teeth. We look at your jaw structure as well.
Right.
We're looking at, hey, is your upper jaw kind of developing in a proper way according to the rest of your head and your lower jaw? Because what people don't understand as well is that we see patients who come in and they have a very kind of constricted mouth, constricted arches in their mouth. And what I kind of the analogy I like to tell people is that if you have a very narrow jaw, that's less room for your adult teeth to come in.
Right.
And then that's when people come in and they're like, oh yeah, my teeth are really crowded. Well, we probably could have done something at a younger age to widen your upper jaw.
Right.
Right? Because what I like to tell people during consultation is that our upper jaw is essentially made out of 2 bones that come together in the middle. But at our age, it's already fused into 1 bone. But at a kid's age, it's still 2 bones. So we have the opportunity to take advantage of that lack of fusion to maybe possibly widen the upper jaw. Because if you or myself wanted to widen our upper jaw at our age, now we're talking about jaw surgery.
Right.
Right? So sometimes when I relay this to a parent, I'm like, if we can do something now that kind of prevents something a lot tougher in the future, we should probably try to do that at that age.
Right.
And that's where kind of doing something early at around like age 7, 8, 9. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, if we're treating a 7-year-old, it's probably because there's something very specific that we need to address. But usually at 7, I'll be like, let's see you back in a year.
Right. Well, like we said, it could be great. There's nothing, but it's having that initial assessment to be like, okay, here are some potential problems that we could have, like thumb sucking, or you had mentioned crowding. And if you kind of pinpoint those potential issues, you are able to, like, there's appliances that can be used to kind of help that along, and like you said, help not having invasive or maybe procedures that are much more invasive in the future.
And invasive to the point where, like, there are certain points where we may even have to consider taking out some adult teeth to fit everything. And if we could have done something at a younger age to prevent that, maybe that's something that we could have gone out. And another thing, you actually just touched on thumb sucking. A lot of parents ask me, what should we do? What like when should it be gone? A good rule of thumb is that if there's still a habit after the age of 4, that's when they're going to start actually permanently changing the shape of their jaw.
Really?
Because at such a young age, and with that amount of force, what people don't understand, even though it's the thumb going in there, that's a
sucking
motion creates essentially a vacuum inside your mouth, and that vacuum can actually start to alter the development of your facial bones. Because it's actually very easy to change the shape of your bones if you're putting a constant force on it.
Right. And you're that young, and like you mentioned, it's not fused, so there's just so much stuff that can go on because of that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really interesting.
That's why I tell some like parents and even patients, like sometimes we'll come in and like a patient will tell us, then they're in their mid-20s and be like, I still suck my thumb, and it's like, then we look at the bite and it's like, unfortunately, like we now probably have to talk about jaw surgery.
Right.
If we wanted to fix this.
Wow. Yeah. And I mean, it also would definitely, coming in and the preventative measures, it may be honestly cheaper for people in the long run because you can prevent possibly braces or other, really expensive treatments.
And that's exactly what it is. And we tell people that it's a kind of like a cost to benefit ratio, where it's like if you do something small at an earlier age, the dividends it may reap long term might actually be more beneficial to you, right? So that's where it's all about, like, I always understand everybody's situation is different.
Yes,
right? Because,
of
like,
course.
it's always hard to be like, oh no. I always tell them, like, listen, if you can't do this now, or if it's something that it doesn't work out for you now, just always know it'll always be an option in the future.
Right.
One thing I don't know, I say nobody's ever died from crooked teeth, right?
True enough.
Right?
And
so that's why I always tell them, I'm like, it's always something that you can do at, like, even today we saw a 61-year-old for a consult.
Sure.
Because they wanted to fix something that they never had the opportunity to do when they were younger. And they were like, you know what, I really want to fix this now. And absolutely, I love it. I tell everybody, I'm like, there's no reason to not want to do it because of anything.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, that's great information. I'm just going to check here again. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining in. Rhoda says my favorite dentist. That's awesome. So if you are just tuning in, we are sitting down today because February is Children's Dental Health Month, and we are chatting with Dr. Matta from Doc Braces here in Truro, also Yarmouth, but for these particular purposes, Truro. If you have any questions, let us know. He would be happy to answer them.
Absolutely.
So get those in. So I guess next question is, what can you expect for your first visit at Doc Braces in Truro?
So the great thing about kind of our offices that we do is we offer free consultations.
That's amazing.
Right?
Yeah.
Because we understand kind of what kind of goes into the commitment, and I understand that not everybody understands what they kind of need or don't need. Because we don't want that, and if there's an initial fee for you to be like, you know what, maybe I don't want to do this, right? Because I don't even know if I want to do it. So for us, by doing a free consultation, it allows them to kind of come in with no commitments.
Right.
Right? And then from there, that's when I'll come in and I'll kind of just we'll take like x-rays, we'll take photos, I'll come in, introduce myself with our treatment coordinator, Wanda, and we kind of do like a full-on consultation.
Just so everybody knows, is behind us because she wouldn't get on the camera. Anyways, we'll continue.
So we'll do like a whole clinical examination, and like and during that time, that's when I'll look inside the mouth. I'll review the X-rays, I'll review the photos, and that's when I'll have the parent or the patient, depending on who it is, and the child if the child's the patient. And what I like to do during that time is we like to pull up everything that we just took, the photos, the X-rays, and we have a nice TV in our consult room. We'll pull them up, and I spend that time kind of explaining what I see.
Right.
What I see, and one thing I really value as being an orthodontist is that I want to always kind of relay what I'm thinking to the patient and the parent. Because it's easy enough for me to come in and just say, oh yeah, braces, and leave the room.
Sure.
But for me, I like to explain my thought process, and I like to explain why we want to do this and what the long-term benefits are, right? Because what people don't understand is like, yeah, they have a little bit of an overbite. That'll be fine. But I tell them, I'm like, no, but when you have a little bit of an overbite, depending on where your teeth are kind of biting, you can actually wear down your teeth.
Right.
That's something that, for the long run, we probably don't want to do. Because my analogy I like to tell people is that your front teeth are meant to be like scissors. Like you don't have a pair of scissors that hit on top of each other like this. They're supposed to overlap a little bit, right? Because your front teeth are meant to bite into things. And it's your back teeth that are the mashers. That's the one that you're supposed to really have the brunt of your force. And that's why your molars are significantly bigger and stronger than your front teeth.
Okay.
Right? So I like to really spend the time kind of explaining this to them. All right? And that's why the one thing I always want to make sure is that before I leave the consult room, I want to make sure that everything makes sense. Right? Yeah. Because the last thing I want to do is to have people be more confused than they were when I first came in.
Because I mean, when it comes down to it, orthodontics can be an expensive thing to have to. It's an investment.
It's an investment. It's an investment.
Ta-da! Right? But you know, and if you leave there feeling confused about what's going on, it's like, oh great, so here's my very, a good significant chunk of money, but I don't really know or understand why it's happening.
Exactly.
Like, great, you need braces, perfect.
Exactly.
And I think that really comes back to the first initial consultation being free too, because I think where you had said, with children being around 7 and the time them coming in, I think, like I said, as me as a parent, unless I had heard my dentist say, go to the orthodontist, I would think everything's cool, right? Exactly. Like, so why am I gonna, take that money and go get it checked out if really probably everything's fine? Yeah. But you have that initial assessment, it's no cost to you, and then it's like, okay, now we know where we stand, and we can make a plan for the future. Exactly. Yeah.
And the best part is not even like a plan for the future, but it's also we can give you options. We can tell you, hey, we can do something now that can probably make things easier in the future, but in case we don't want to do something now, this is what we should expect. Right. Right? So at least it doesn't people feel pressured. Mm-hmm. Right? And one thing I make sure that I like to do during my consult is like I really like to make sure I manage expectations. Because I don't want people coming in and feeling as though that they were told this and then they got something that wasn't what they were hoping that they were going to get. So when I have patients come in and I notice specific things, I'll tell them, I'm like, listen, like there's a chance that this might happen, right? Especially for adults. Adults will come in, they want to straighten their teeth, and then at the end of treatment, they're like, why don't I look like Julia Roberts, right? And it's like, well, one, she has veneers, right? Yeah. Right? And but that's where I like to kind of tell them, like, everybody's different. Right. This is what you should expect at the end.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's got to make people more comfortable having somebody that really wants to, explain what is happening, what could happen, and what the options are going forward. And so if somebody comes in to say, a parent comes in with their child and you do your initial assessment and you're like, everything looks good for now, but we may need treatment for something later. Yeah. There's something called the growth guidance program.
Yeah. So the way we kind of like to do it is that we don't want you to come in, tell you everything that's good, and be like, well, call us when you need us. Right. Right? We like to build that relationship. And that's where I think being in a community kind of builds upon that. Because for us, it's us seeing a parent with a child, and even if everything's coming normally, we're like, hey, let's see you back in a year. Well, because in a year's time, things could be different.
So much can change. Right? That's the thing. In a year, exactly, it's it doesn't seem that long.
I'm pretty sure your kids have already grown a foot.
Right, exactly.
Like,
100%.
You never know what can happen.
Yeah.
And so when we see them in a year, it could be that thing where we were like, hey, let's keep an eye on this because this might be an issue, this might not be. And then in a year's time, we'll do a double check. Because the great thing is that we make sure we take detailed notes based on that consultation. And then when we see them a year later, we review those notes. Right. Be like, oh yeah, we wanted to keep an eye on this thing. And then it's like, how does it look today?
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of the times too that we do as well is that sometimes we strategically will have the dentist or the pediatric dentist or the oral surgeon extract some baby teeth to help guide the adult teeth to move into a better spot.
Right.
Right? Because there are times where we can see in the x-ray and we notice that the adult tooth's developing, but it's kind of developing in a way that it's kind of going off the track.
Okay.
And when it's going off the track, we're like, hey, let's give it a little bit, let's let it develop a little bit more, but then at a certain point, let's get that baby tooth out for that developing tooth to be like, oh, there's a path of least resistance for me to come in and self-correct.
Right.
Because there are times where if we can strategically take out some baby teeth in specific situations, a lot of the adult teeth will actually self-correct themselves. Right? But a lot of parents won't know that because they won't know what's happening under the gums.
Yeah, right. How would you? Of course.
So that's where I think we kind of come in and kind of realize being like, hey, let us chat with your dentist and kind of let them know what our thoughts are. So that's why whenever we do something like that, we'll send a letter typically back to the dentist being like, hey, can you take out these baby teeth in hopes that those adult teeth will actually come into a better place?
And again, it just comes back to it's preventative measures in that way.
Exactly.
You know, you're doing that in hopes that it's going to correct itself and then you don't have to do braces or, you know, a bigger something in the future.
And people always ask, well, how much does braces cost? Right, and that's usually the question that we. And that's a question. I don't blame anybody. I don't. Right. I would never be. I still, even when I go anywhere I go, I'm like, wait, how much does this cost? Right. And what I tell people is that the orthodontics cost varies per person, and the reason it varies per person, it all depends on how much work needs to be done. If it's something very minor, that person's definitely not going to be paying as much as a person that needs a lot more done.
Yeah.
And so that's where it comes back to the preventative, where if we're coming in and be like, hey, if we can strategically take out this baby tooth and those adult teeth come into a better position, when it is time to maybe talk about orthodontic treatment, we're not talking about something that could possibly take a year and a half, when if we didn't do that, it would have taken 2+ years.
Right.
And the 2+ years is more expensive than the year to year and a half.
Of course, right. Yeah, and I feel like it might be hard for, I mean, again, talking as my experience as a parent, to see it that way in the moment, you know, so to actually hear it and you know, hear you speak on the importance of doing that, because in that moment you're like, well, you know, here's the amount I have to do when maybe nothing's wrong, but you know, there could be, and 3, 4, 5 years in the future, you're saving yourself a very large sum of money to not have to say get braces or other orthodontic treatments.
Exactly.
Yeah, very interesting. So we're just gonna check here again. See how we're doing. Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. So Tabitha asked if you do treat adults as well. So yeah, you had mentioned
absolutely. That. I would probably say we're about like, I would probably maybe like 60-40, like maybe 60 under 18, 40 above 18. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. Like I think a lot of adults do, like they come in and it's a lot of adults also realize that they have the opportunity to do it now when they didn't have the opportunity to do it before.
So it's not something like, if you didn't do it when you were younger, that's it. It's too bad, right? It's you still have, there's time, like you said, you treated a 61-year-old patient the other day. So Tabitha also said, do you find that age 7 checkup is important, or is it just general guideline?
A little bit of both.
Right.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because I do think it's important because you do want to get a starting point. You know what I mean? It's just like when you take your baby to the pediatrician for the first time, the first thing they do is weigh them. Right. Right? And then when you take them back in a year, they weigh them again. And then a year after that, they weigh them again, and they put it on a chart to make sure things are kind of trajectory in a proper, like an ideal direction. Right? Yeah. And that's kind of the way we do it. But for us, a starting point is usually around 7. Don't get me wrong. Is there certain cases where we need to see them a bit earlier? Sure. Always. Yeah. Right? But 7 is the good point to start because we know that at least their adult molars in the back have started to come in, and the front 4 teeth and bottom 4 teeth have kind of baby teeth are falling out or have fallen out. Yeah, yeah. And then that way we can be like, okay, let's kind of see where our starting point is, and if there's nothing we need to do then, Let's see them back in about 12 to 18 months, and then do another checkpoint there and do a little comparison.
Yeah, I feel like that was a really great analogy with using the, you take your baby in, first thing you're going to do is weigh, and then it's, chart, like everything, you're hitting everything. So yeah, I think that was a really great analogy. Just bring them in at 7, see how they're doing. If there is something, you've caught it early. If there's not, great, we see them in a year, 18 months. And like you had mentioned, that the first consultation is free to stop in, so you don't even have to worry about an initial cost.
And actually every recall and growth guidance appointment is free as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's just for us to keep track of everybody, there's no cost to it at all.
Tapison, thank you very much.
Of course.
Very helpful. Well, yeah, that's fantastic. So, you also, we kind of touched on the fact that the cost varies between patients, but you guys have other options available as well, right?
Yes.
Like we said, orthodontic treatments can be pricey, because you're investing in your teeth.
Yeah. And one thing that we really pride ourselves on, it's not like you're coming to us for a one-time only, I'm getting this one thing done, I'm out the next day, see you never, right? The thing about orthodontics is that it's a long-term commitment, and because it's a long-term commitment, we understand the impact it can have kind of financially.
Right.
So we really want to make sure that we can offer very flexible payment plans, and they're always interest-free. We never charge interest or anything like that there. The thing we'll actually do that is that if it's something you want to either pay upfront, we can offer a discount.
Wow.
We offer family discounts. We offer just kind of just things in general where we also direct bill to insurances as well.
Fantastic. That's always, I feel like that's a big deal for a lot of families that come in, honestly.
Exactly.
Because if, you go to a place and they don't direct bill, it's like, okay, I know I'm getting this money back, but I have to come up with, that lump sum of money to begin with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we have found that by being able to kind of help patients and parents out with doing that, it does allow them to really be like, okay, this is something we can do. It's not as overwhelming. Exactly. Yeah. It's not as big as a short-term burden, because it's not, even though they said you're going to get the money back, but at least in this way, it's not a bigger chunk coming out then. That's
right. And honestly, especially in today's economy and the way things are in the world, not everybody has that kind of money to come up with, so it's like, well, I don't have it, even though I know I'm going to get it back, I don't have it right this moment, so I guess that's just going to,
exactly.
We'll just have to wait, and then, you wait and you wait and wait, and then things have now progressed to the point where it's like, well, had you paid in maybe this much sooner, we wouldn't have had to do these other things that are now going to be that much more expensive.
Yeah, so we really make sure that there's not a specific situation where it's like, okay, it's a flat fee for everybody, no matter how hard, it's very patient specific.
Right.
We want to make sure that we understand that if it's something very basic or something that's very minor, that you are able to not be like, oh, this is way too much, I wasn't expecting this, I just want to do this one little thing. Mm-hmm. That's where we want to make sure it's like, hey, we want to do it based on kind of what we expect the treatment is required.
Right. And I think a payment plan option is also just, anybody in the office here works with me knows I'm a payment plan girl. If I get anything on a payment plan, I'm like, all right, I'm sold. Yeah. So just, the fact, just knowing okay, it's going to be this much, but we're doing it over however many payments, and this is what it's just so much easier to budget, and just having that peace of mind, knowing it's not something that's going to put me out. If something else happened to say my car. Yeah. You just have those options, and I think that's really great. That Doc Braces offers those kind of options, and it just makes it that much more inclusive too, really. Yeah. Because I feel like dental hygiene, probably in general, is it's almost a privileged kind of thing, because there's so many. It can be so expensive if you don't have insurance, or if you go with someone and they don't have a payment plan. So just knowing that you have those options, and you have your free initial assessment, I think you're really making it just so widely, so many people can access it. I think that's really fantastic,
and that's really what we're aiming for with kind of Doc Braces as well, and the way we kind of pride ourselves, right? And kind of distinguish ourselves. We want to make sure that we want to make sure that if you're starting treatment, it's because, one, you can, and you want to.
Right. It's not meant to be a more stressful even situation.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. So we're going to check just a couple more, see if anybody's, Tabitha just keeps saying thank you very much.
Of course.
All right. Excellent. So, again, we'll just really quickly introduce, if you're just joining us, this is Dr. Matta from Doc Braces here in Truro. We are chatting about orthodontics and everything kind of dental, children's dental health related, because it is February, which is Children's Dental Health Month. Dr. Matta works at Doc Braces here in Truro and as well in Yarmouth. He's been giving us some great information. You can go back and check these videos out after the fact as well. As I said, Dr. Matta really gave us lots to think about and answered so many great questions, ones that I didn't even know I had, so that's fantastic. So I guess maybe we'll touch with Doc Braces again. You had mentioned they have offices all over Eastern Canada, really.
Yeah.
So Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, PEI, and well, you said Eastern Canada and Canada.
Yeah, I think at this point now, like it's gotten to a point where I know the last time I checked, it was I think almost over 70 offices across Canada. Like
Fantastic.
going all the way from BC, from Vancouver Island, all the way to PEI.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
They've done a great job in kind of creating a giant network. Because one thing that's been great is that you never know where life's going to take you.
Right.
Right. So
Absolutely.
especially
As you kind of talked about earlier,
Yeah.
you know, when we sat down, you didn't start out here. You were from Toronto, and you know now you and your fiance are both here in Nova Scotia.
Nova Scotia, right? So
you just don't know.
You just never know, and especially when we get a lot of kids in here, especially with a lot of parents like, oh, like I know hockey's like kids playing hockey or kids going to university, and what do we do? Because we don't want a parent to ever feel as though, oh, my kid's gonna go to university in a year, we don't know where they're gonna go, so I don't want to have to pay twice.
Sure.
Right? And the great thing about having a giant network of offices across Canada is that, one, if you start with us and you're midway through treatment and you're saying, oh, I'm moving to Calgary.
Right.
Well, guess what? We have a Doc Braces in Calgary. So we'll transfer you over to Doc Braces in Calgary, and they'll just continue on with the exact same.
Oh, that really does make things a whole lot easier when it comes to, you know, say, even if you have to pack up your whole family and move, and now it's like, okay, great, now I have to find a whole new doctor, dentist. But if you're with Doc Braces, it's like, okay, we'll just transfer you over to our nearest office, and you know, they have all of your information and the way to go. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, we have a great protocol on making sure that we can kind of help the onboarding of like, oh, when you're there, you're settled, here's who you call, or we'll have them reach out to you when you've made the move. And it's a great little network. And the cool thing about Doc Braces is that like we had our first in-person conference in November for a few years, right? COVID, right? So it was very cool being able to meet some of the other doctors in person, not on Zoom.
Yeah.
Right? So we had a great time, just kind of like mixing and mingling and being like, hey, like we've shared, like we've gone over all these things together.
Yeah.
And so it's really like now then when it ever gets to a point where a patient or a parent needs to move, it's not me just telling, blindly, you'll go see this doctor whom I've never met. Well, it's like, no, now I've pretty much, I know them, I've met them, they know me. Right? And if you need me to reach out to them, we have a relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's a really great peace of mind for people that, you know, have, are moving or have just even had an extensive orthodontic history, right?
Yeah.
And because I feel like that's probably a stressful thing if it's like, I've had all this work done and it's all been at this office, and now we're moving and now I have to go see somebody totally new.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I feel like, you know, if you are getting orthodontic treatment, you probably get a bit of a repertoire with your with your surgeon or with your orthodontist, and you know, and to be like, okay, now I have to go through that all again.
Yeah.
But to have to have that person who you trust be like, okay, you know, I know that person, or I've talked to that person. We have this relationship. I'm going to make sure that they know all of these things about you. Exactly. And you're going to be in great hands. Like, I really feel like that's a great peace of mind to have.
Exactly.
And I feel like for a child or a parent with a child, that's got to be just like a kind of thing.
It'll definitely relieves a lot of the stress.
Absolutely.
It's just one less thing to think about.
Yeah. So if somebody wanted to schedule their complimentary first orthodontic visit, how would they go about doing that here in Truro, or with Doc Braces, I guess, just in general?
You can definitely go online.
Yeah.
I think online's probably like everything you can do right now.
Of course.
Like, if
yeah.
you just, Google, you literally type in dock braces and dock braces churro should kind of pop up.
Perfect.
I would probably say anything like, I would say our Facebook page.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We have a really active Facebook page as well.
And the email is just churro@dockbraces.com, so you can
Churro
reach out that way as well.
Exactly.
Phone number, I mean, we might as well just throw it out there. It's
go.
902-895-1737, so you can always give them a call as well. They can answer any questions. Wanda would be happy to talk to you.
No referrals required.
No referrals required. That's great too.
We do a lot of, like, we absolutely take walk-ins, so you don't need to be referred by your dentist to come in. Again, if you have a 7-year-old and you're like, hey, let me go get them checked out.
Absolutely. Well, I feel like I'm gonna have to call and make an appointment, honestly, because like I was saying, like Mason has his first tooth is coming out. Of course, he's a little nervous because it's never happened before. So it's like he's excited that it's wiggly and it's coming out. The tooth fairy's coming, and that's great. But he's also, nervous to wiggle it, and what's it gonna feel like when it comes? And I can see that little tooth behind there now. And of course, I feel like it's always been a thing, or at least when I grew up. My mom was always telling me, wiggle it, get it out, because if that tooth doesn't come in, if that other tooth is not out of there and that one behind comes up and it's not out there, it's a whole thing from there, right? Like a big mess. So maybe, can you touch, just even from my own personal knowledge, can you touch on that for me? Like, is that a fact? Like, if his little tooth isn't quite under there or out of there and I can see his tooth behind, like, is that an issue?
Yeah, it very well could be, because what's happening is that baby tooth is hanging on for dear life and telling that adult tooth, I'm not getting out of the chair, you figure out where to sit.
Right.
And what could happen is that adult tooth could be like, okay, well, I'm going to sit right behind you in a non-ideal way.
Mm-hmm.
And then when that day comes when you're ready to finally leave,
it's like pointed backwards or something.
I'm now 90-degree rotated. Right. And
I'm comfortable.
And I'm not going back to where I was supposed to go.
Right.
So, and that's kind of where, like, your teeth, in a way, do have a mind of their own.
Yeah.
But it's really, you want to give them the best shot to kind of come in as straight as possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's, like I said, you've given me lots to think about, especially just in terms of, my own children and getting them checked out, because I think I was really on the side of, I just wouldn't have done it, because like you said, I've had teeth, my teeth have been good, so if my teeth are good, then my children's teeth, they gotta be good.
A lot of parents use past experience. They're like, oh yeah, I didn't have to do that, why would they need to do that, right? And it's something that they just don't understand, that there's a lot more to that.
It's very different.
It's very
different. Yeah. Like, you obviously know you and your children are very different people, but I feel like you just kind of get that thing in your mind, and like you've mentioned, the difference between your teeth and your children's teeth could be just a world of difference.
Exactly, yeah.
And preventative measures, like you had mentioned before. All right, so we'll just check again here and see if there's any other questions. Right in now. Joined in. So if you guys have any questions for Dr. Matta, please let us know. We'd be happy to help that, or to answer them, not help them, answer them. I tell you. All right. I feel like we could maybe just go over a couple things that we had spoke about just in the beginning, in case, we just have some people tuning in now. We have a few more minutes here. So I think a really important thing for people to know about dock braces and the orthodontic treatment that they do there is that your first initial assessment is free.
Yeah.
So you come in, you're gonna check it out, and if there's nothing wrong, wonderful. Say at this moment there's nothing wrong, but we'll check in with you a little later, a year, 18 months down the road, see how it's going. So that again is called your growth guidance program.
Yeah.
So you guys will actually check in with parents, right? Like, it's not something like, in a year, make sure you give us a call.
No. So the great thing about our like, I would say, like, our software, like, is probably the best way to say it, like our patient management software, is that we can apply, like, kind of like, once a patient's in our system, we can kind of, if we decide we need to put them on a growth guidance, we can kind of set them on that track. So even if we don't know our schedule for a year, there's a way that once our schedule is up, it'll kind of flag us, telling us which patients need to be booked, and when did we need, how many months did we tell them we want to see them next.
Interesting.
So that way it helps our front desk and all of our staff who deal with booking, they'll get a list being like, okay, we need to book patient X on this date, we saw them here, they need to be booked anytime after this date. And that's when you'll get a call from us being like, hey, it's your friendly team over at Doc Braces and Churro, we're ready to book you for your growth guidance exam.
Yeah.
And if you, we'll let us know what days work, and we'll give options and kind of book it then. Yeah. So we definitely keep track, and that's why we want to make sure that it's as easy and comfortable for the parent or patient as possible.
Yeah, because I feel like that's something you could get over.
Yeah.
I mean, parents have so many things to remember, and if you go in for your first assessment and it's like, no, everything's good right now, like, well, a year or 18 months down the road, there is not a chance I'm going to remember that.
Exactly.
So to know that, that's something that, you're going to get the call and be like, okay, great, yeah, let's book that in because, we want to make sure, like we have mentioned, it's preventative measures. Exactly. Getting in for that first assessment, seeing if there is something going on that's going to, because if you get it early, you're going to hopefully prevent, say, maybe braces or other things that could happen. Yeah. So, that's really great. So, I mean, I feel like is there anything else you feel like you would like to cover?
No, I think like that pretty much is, especially with Children's Health Month, since we're really focusing kind of on the younger side. Exactly.
Because I mean, you do clients from 7 to like you said 61 or older. So
one thing I actually can touch upon is that we do a lot of what I call interdisciplinary work, where let's just say that you went and saw your dentist and are like, hey, I want to get, let's just say, veneers. I want to get some crowns. I want to fix everything. But then
I want my teeth to look like Julia Roberts.
But then your dentist looks at you and sees that you have a tooth that's like 45 degrees this way and one sticking out that way. It's like, well, you can't just put veneers on teeth that are not aligned. Right? So we do work with a lot of the general dentists in the area very closely. To the point where if they refer them to us, they're like, this patient wants this, can you help get their teeth in the proper positions for us to do the best job possible?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's where there are times where that's when your general dentist and I will either go back and forth, maybe a phone call with each other, maybe we'll send each other some letters and just be like, okay, I agree, this is what I can do, this is what realistically I think I can get, this is where I think I can get all the teeth, is this good with you?
Right.
And then that's when they'll be like, yeah, I think that's perfect, let's do that first. And that's where the dentist will then relay back to the patient being like, okay, once you're done with your orthodontic and everything's straight, then I can come in and get you what exactly you were trying to get done.
Right.
Because especially like people who, like adults who actually had it, if they've ever had an adult tooth pulled, but they had an adult tooth pulled like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and now they're like, shoot, I want to get an implant. I can finally get that implant. You go see the dentist is like, oh, your teeth have moved into that, we can't put an implant in there.
Right.
That's where we would come in and do an assessment, being like, hey, can we reopen that space? Can we put the teeth into the proper spot so we get your bite into a stable position to support an implant? Right? So we do a lot of things with, especially adults, and especially, as I was saying before, with kids who, if they ever naturally didn't grow in an adult tooth.
Right, yeah, I didn't even know that was like a thing.
Yeah, and the most common missing adult tooth is actually your lateral incisor, which is right here, right? And if we can see that from an earlier age, we can actually plan with that with your dentist to be like, look, at this age, we want to do this, we're going to try to do this, we're going to open up this space, so when we're done, you can put either like something removable, something permanent, or even an implant in that spot. The whole key is putting things in ideal positions. Right. Because when you put them in an ideal position, that makes it the most stable.
And the sooner you have that information, obviously, the better it's, all going to kind of come together. Yeah. Very interesting. There's so many kind of tidbits that I just didn't know.
Those are my favorite cases. Like for me, I did do in residency. I did do a lot of jaw surgery with the oral surgeons, where I'm at the point now where I feel quite confident. Where if you like, there are patients who come in and they're like, I can't bite, like I just physically can't chew. My bite doesn't feel. Every time I bite down, I feel like I'm biting into a different place every time. And there are people who come in saying that like my lower jaw is too big, or my lower jaw is too small, or my upper jaw is too in. My upper jaw is too far forward. And if we ever have to talk about some sort of jaw surgery, anytime you do any sort of surgical procedure involving the jaw, you have to do orthodontics first. Okay. You need to make sure that the teeth are in the proper place first before the surgeon can physically take the jaws and put them into the proper place.
And that would be adult or children.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. But more so, like, we wait till you're done growing for kids. But there are, again, certain specific cases where if you're a 16-year-old and we know you're done growing, yeah, maybe it's something we could do at that
Right.
age. Yeah.
Huh. That's great information. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Of course.
I really appreciate it. Like,
Yeah.
I you know, and I'm sure that all our followers, even if they didn't learn anything, I know I sure did. So they had to have. So just kind of a recap. Dr. Matter from Doc Braces here in Truro. February is Children's Dental Health Month, so reach out to Doc Braces. You can contact them they have Facebook, they have a webpage. Their email is just truro@docbraces.com. First assessment is free, and that's child right up to, whatever age you are. If you want to get that checked and you want to go in, your first assessment is not going to cost you any money, which is just, honestly, it's really fantastic. They have so many options. They have payment plans. They have direct billing. They really want to work with you to make sure that, that your teeth and your dental health are where they're supposed to be. So thank you so much for coming in and visiting us. I really, really appreciate it. Have a great evening. Thanks for tuning in, guys. All right. This is always the part. All right, in there and video and